Yeah. So tonight is spending a bit of time looking at coping and resilience plans. And also, as per usual, if you've got any questions, anything that you want me to kind of think about with you, then, this time is yours really. So do as normal kind of pop up questions as we go. I won't be looking at them because I find it impossible to multitask in terms of looking at the questions as well as kind of doing this. So I'll just rely on you, Jill, to interrupt me with things as we go if need
Yeah,
to.
will
Okay.
do.
Um, so there's three examples of coping and resilience plans that we're going to go through, and really, to be totally honest with you, they all kind of represent the same things. They're just written slightly differently, slightly different layout, slightly different colours, and I think what it really does represent is that actually, you can totally tailor this to your needs and or your son or daughter's needs, and or anybody else really. So the thing about coping and resilience plans, or just plans or behaviour plans or whatever you want to call them, is that they're a really good way of helping young people think about themselves, really think about what it is that they find difficult to manage, what it is that they find easy to manage, what it is that they do and how they show others when they're really starting to struggle, and what it is that they need adults and or other young people around them to do when they're starting to struggle. And I guess what I would say to you is that whenever you're thinking about developing a coping resilience plan, or whatever you choose to call it, I'll just call it that for the sake of tonight really, is that they're not things that you can develop just in one go. So when we're using them in service with young people, I very much taught the team, and the team will very much talk about them being quite a therapeutic intervention in themselves. So, would likely be done, over 2 to 3 sessions. Sometimes they can be done over one session, but, more often than not, it's over a few sessions. And it's because really quite often you're asking a young person to think in a different way and to kind of explore parts of their emotions and way of coping that perhaps we haven't really kind of engaged in those conversations with before. Okay, so each of them, the core principles of a coping resilience plan really is that you need to get it appropriately balanced between positives and strengths of a young person alongside areas that they feel they find challenging or difficult. And that's because what we don't want to do is take a hit on a child's self-esteem through this process, because quite often what underlies all of us when we perhaps engage in behaviors or say things that we may not be particularly proud of is that it does take a little bit of a hit on our self-esteem, and we need a lot of reassurance and kind of restorative approaches around us to kind of help us to move forward and learn from that. And so that really has got to be the premise of that. The other part of this is that it really is about a young person communicating with the adults around them about what they need us to do. So it really is important that we respect that and go with that. Now, clearly there are boundaries to that. Obviously, if what a young person needs those around them to do is not safe, then that's the conversation, that's the kind of negotiation piece. And you're not necessarily going to be able to negotiate that all in the one go, you know. So if we just sort of take, so for example, one that I did earlier to put on Word document was this one in terms of my plan. I think Jill, I don't know if you got a chance to send these around, what have you? Okay.
Yeah, I've put them on the page, and
Okay.
people can get them through the Facebook page, or I can email them over if people need them.
Fab. So this one is so my plan, and essentially, it's in Word documents so that you can get hold of it and you can, add into it, change it as you want, what have you. But the first thing that I put in there is these are the things that can make me upset, because the reason why we end up writing a coping resilience plan is because somebody needs us to help them cope with something, isn't it? If we're all going along tickety boo, then we don't really do one. So that might otherwise be known as triggers in kind of other environments. And that can be really hard for a young person to identify, because quite often what you're asking a young person to do is kind of really sit and reflect and think about what happened in that situation, what was it, and you're asking them to maybe think in a way that they haven't before, whereas they've just reacted before. Okay, so don't be surprised if the first thing you get is I don't know, or there's nothing. I just wake up feeling that way, or what have you. Okay. So, sometimes we have to do some curious questioning, some playful questioning, and kind of thinking about actually, giving some examples. So these are some things that can make me upset. I wonder are any of these the sort of things that make you upset? And obviously what you might do is kind of intentionally choose some things that you think probably do resonate with your young child or young person. Okay. Um, and I guess it's really important there, isn't it? They can be big or they can be little, but it's really important that it's just whatever it is that somebody is communicating to us, we recognize that and we validate that. And validation is really, really important, because sometimes we can't change anything, but there's so much that can be given by validating someone's feelings and experiences. And so it's an opportunity. The next box along is about, this is what I need from you when they happen. Okay. And it really is a young person's opportunity to let us know, when this happens, what I need you or other people around me to do is this. Okay. And it's also a chance to really add in there about what doesn't help, because I'm sure we've all been in situations as adults where, we have something has, triggered us and we've got a bit upset or angry. And maybe what hasn't helped is someone's responses to us, which has kind of escalated it, made us more angry, but also perhaps made us completely disengaged and shut off from that person. And I guess that's what we're trying to do, the opposite of that here, which is why it's really important that we give young people the space to say and allow them to say, do you know what, when you do that, it really doesn't work for me and I need you to do something different. And then the next bit is about, this is what I'm learning to help me manage things better. And that's that bit about, it's really hard for us, any of us, to change the way we behave. And we kind of need, before you can do something different, before you can behave differently or act differently, you need to learn how to behave differently or act differently. And, quite often, certainly depending on the age of the child or young person, maybe you might, as parents, carers, think back and think, well, they've just always reacted like that. And if they have always reacted like that, then the chances are that they don't know any other way to react. And we might have to kind of take it step by step back to help them to learn a new skill, a different way of being, which might be, a good way of illustrating that might be when you have maybe experienced people being given like a card to leave a classroom. They hold the card up, they can leave the classroom, that sort of thing. It's about learning a new skill of saying, I'm going to hold this card up and I'm going to leave the classroom, so I still get my end goal met, but what I'm not going to do is tip up a table and chairs and swear at the teacher to be able to get my end goal met, if that makes sense. Okay, so it's really important that in helping young persons do something differently, we teach them a new skill, how to do something differently, but also that we kind of break it down for them. And you've probably heard me say this before, is that we help them to help them to learn that new skill outside of time when they're feeling kind of highly aroused, highly stressed, highly anxious, because that's not the time to learn, essentially. And to be able to do something different, we need to be proficient at it, and we need confidence in our ability to do it, so that we do turn to it when we're kind of even at our kind of highest high, really. Because when we're at our highest high is when our kind of cognitive functioning is probably at our lowest low, really, because all the other kind of adrenaline is kicking in. All right. New skills are hard to learn. They take practice. You just think of any new skill that you as an adult need to try and learn. It does take practice. I'm just trying to think about, I've been put as part of this cookery club, right? Part of kind of shut lockdown and what have you. And part of that is about making a cake every week. Well, that's a new skill to me, and I can assure you it's taken me a lot of practice to be able to learn that. So you kind of just, if you think about everyday things like that and how hard it is to learn new skills as adults, think about how hard it is for our children and young people to learn new skills. So we have to kind of really emphasize it, okay? And then the bit there that says, this is what happens when I really struggle to manage my emotions, is really kind of the opportunity to name, what is it that I see you do? So, how do I know that you're starting to struggle? What do you say? What do you do? What do you not do? Do you not get out of bed in the morning? Do you start skipping dinner? Do you start swearing? Do you kind of start slamming doors? What is it that You can tell me and I can tell you, this is what I notice you saying and doing or not doing. What do you kind of, notice in yourself that thinks that when that happens, that's my trigger as the adult around you to start doing something differently and changing my behavior, so that I can help you to manage yours. And I guess it's that joint responsibility, isn't it, with children and young people, is that it really is about us as adults taking responsibility to change our behavior and our interactions to be able to help a young person to be able to change theirs. And it's that kind of 50-50 negotiation process all the time. And then the bit about kind of what I need you to do to keep me safe. So this is a really non-blaming, non-judgmental and highly restorative area, okay? For a young person to kind of open themselves up, if maybe they have always behaved in this way, always done this way, for them to open themselves up and say, actually, do you know what, I do want to change, but I know it's going to be tough, or I want to do something differently, I want to manage my anxiety in a different way, or what have you. We need to really boost their self-esteem and self-confidence to be able to do that. And we need to really work in a restorative way that, kind of coaches them, parents them, that makes them says, it's okay to do this. It really is all right. And I'm going to be there with you kind of every step of the way to do that. And so, it really is about kind of anything that you can help a young person with. But also, what's quite important to look at for some young people is that who is the best person to help them at that time. Let's not assume it's parents, carers. It might be, a friend on the phone. It might be the dog, the cat. It might well be actually nobody. What's best is that they just able to go to their room and calm down. And I think, sometimes we have to open ourselves up to sort of hearing that, do you know what, in that moment in time, I appreciate that maybe, you and I need a bit of space from each other, particularly at this moment in time under lockdown. And that might be what helps best. So it really is kind of getting yourself as parents, carers in the position to sort of be prepared to kind of hear whatever a young person needs to say, and for us to really sort of accept it and take it restoratively but safely. We're not going to accept any unsafe kind of actions as a result of behaviors, of course. So there's various ways of doing these, and there's some that are far more detailed than others. What I've also included for you is some examples of some completed ones. So you kind of got this one that's got, different shapes on it, and then, kind of different shapes on the back, really. And what that gives you is just some really perhaps starting talking points, really. So for some young people, you may be able to just hit right into this and think, we're quite used to having this type of a dialogue in our house. My son or daughter is really used to kind of talking and thinking in this way because they've been doing X, Y and Z, and we're kind of going to go straight into a blank one and really truly make it our own. But for others, obviously, we are asking them to think and do and engage in a different way. We might just need to really help them out and give them some examples that they might be able to just kind of say, actually, that doesn't apply to me and this does apply to me, that sort of thing. Okay. And I guess I would honestly say to you, the point of, so the part of coping resilience plans when they work best is when they are most creative in terms of what I would use would be interventions that would help. But also most individualized and detailed. The most detail you can get, the better it's going to work, because just putting down in terms of kind of like how do I feel? I feel sad. Well, if I say I feel sad, and maybe if a colleague sat next to me say they feel sad, our experience of feeling sad might be really different. Our triggers for what makes us feel really sad might be really different. So be constantly curious, constantly questioning, as far as obviously a young person will let you before they get a bit fed up with the questioning about, so, okay, so you say you feel sad. When you feel sad, actually, what does that feel like for you? What happens physically for you? What happens kind of like visually for you? Do you cry when you're sad? How do I know that you're sad? When you're sad, is that when you start slamming doors? And, I'm assuming that you're angry. Those sorts of things. So really use this as a talking point, really. And I do think it's okay to include in your coping resilience plans, or whatever you call them, thinking about actually what do you know, a separate plan in terms of what do you need as parents, carers. So, you know, as much as we will always put our young people first, and they are clearly the absolute priority, let's not forget that actually it needs a large amount of emotional availability and resilience from us as the adults around young people to be able to kind of keep going. And so, you know, it is also absolutely 100% okay to be thinking about in your own mind, okay, but actually, what do I need to keep going? You know, what do I need on a daily basis that's just going to pepper into my day, that means that I can make myself available enough when my son or daughter kind of needs me to be that available person for them, rather than I'm up to a 10 and I'm absolutely exhausted and I might not be able to kind of respond appropriately at that time. You know, and that, you know, it happens, doesn't it? We can't, you know, we can't be on our top of our game at all times, really. What else is helpful to think about these things? Think about it in terms of pace. If a young person says to you, actually, you know, after 10 minutes of doing this with you, I've had enough, Gav, that's fine. You know, come back another day, do a little bit more, or, you know, practice it as well. You know, change it once you've got one in place, practice it, change it, be open to feedback. So we talk about, you know, talking restoratively with young people after the fact. Now that might be after a real kind of high anxiety episode, it might be after a behavior episode, you know, it might well be after a kind of episode of just really not being able to get somebody into school in the morning, that sort of thing. But then, you know, when that's over and everybody's calmed down, the young person has calmed down, being in a place that's been able to reflect really restoratively with a young person that says, actually, I'm not sure if I got that right then. Can I check that out with you? Because what I thought was happening was this. And so I reacted in this way. Was that right? Were you doing some, you know, were you thinking something differently? That sort of thing. So kind of using those sort of phrases that kind of opens up that conversation and invites a young person to be able to say to you or us, actually, do you know what, that wasn't what I was thinking, and you know, that wasn't why I reacted that way, and kind of opening that up can really help in kind of then learning more and more and thinking together and jointly about kind of, you know, how to do differently and how to respond differently next time round. The other one that I've given you is they're better when they're in colour, is this one in terms of kind of the coping and resilience plan. Some of you may well have kind of seen that before and sort of heard me talk about it before. But what this one kind of really has that I like about it is it's got there, you know, all the sort of things that you would expect to see, but it also contains in there my plan of how to manage difficult situations if I can't avoid them. And that's really, really important, because clearly in life, we all end up having to kind of, you know, face our fears, face the challenge, face the difficult situation, etc. And it's probably, for majority of us, it's through doing it and kind of natural learning that we then learn to do it next time. So, you know, if you think about maybe a really anxiety provoking time might be going for a job interview, for perhaps, you know, so, you know, I don't think any of us really particularly enjoy putting ourselves through those processes of job interviews, but you know, we do it and we've kind of just learnt naturally that you get really anxious, you get through it, and actually by the end of the day you're not so anxious, and you know, it wasn't quite so bad after all. Worse that happened, I didn't get the job, that sort of thing. But actually for some young people, what they're not able to do is kind of, you know, have that experience, take the learning, kind of just like naturally learn from it and naturally develop. So we have to be quite explicit for them, I guess is the word, and kind of really help them to spell it out and have a plan. And that may well be, you know, true for some of our young people on the autistic spectrum, some of our young people who struggle with anxiety disorders, and the kind of anxiety gets in the way of their kind of cognitive processing around their learning, and also our young people with ADHD, whose levels of kind of impulsivity and hyperactivity really really sort of, distract them from that learning process as well. So that's that bit in terms of where, really sort of thinking about the plan of how to avoid those difficult situations, or how to manage, those difficult situations, can do it. And that's where you can really help a young person to look for their evidence. So thinking with them about times when maybe that difficult situation didn't go so well, why not? What would have made it go better? But also then thinking about those times when that difficult situation actually did go really well, or, well enough, you survived it. Is that well enough, really? And that's, what we're saying there. We're clearly not saying that we expect you to like the situation. This is not what that's about. It's about the fact that we all end up having to do stuff that we don't like and find difficult, but we kind of got to find our way of managing that, and being able to sort of engage with that, really. So that's what I particularly like about that plan. I'm just going to stop there for a moment. Are there any questions or anything like that?
Haven't had anything come up
No?
so far. Anyone got anything they want to ask? It's all very quiet currently. I think we're all listening.
Okay.
Taking it all in.
Okay. So I guess the other bit, so when we did this before, going back, I don't know, maybe 18 months ago now, we also did a bit in terms of asking parent carers to think about their own coping and resilience plan. And I guess so, I touched on that earlier, and I guess I just want to spend a few minutes thinking about how important that is, really, and how impossible it might seem as well, particularly within times like this when we're under lockdown, or not, given the difference in government guidance. But the kids are at home, we're trying to work from home, or we've got other people at home, we're feeling really isolated. And when you're feeling really overwhelmed like that, about actually how difficult it can feel to be able to take a little nugget of time for yourself, really, but just how important that is, because I really firmly believe that actually it's a partnership approach, isn't it? And if parents and carers aren't thinking about their own emotional well-being and mental health, it's really challenging then to be able to be thinking about how you kind of develop that resilience and robustness to help your son or daughter to manage their own mental health difficulties, but to as we say, kind of be in the moment and things like that. So I guess I'm going to steal an idea, really, that Jill and Angie taught me, actually, and I think Rebecca as well, and others probably on the call, about doing like the 24-hour clock, really. So what that is well, actually, I don't know, really. Jill or Angie, do you want to talk about it? Because this is something that you taught me, really, more importantly than me teaching you.
Okay, we can't hear you, Jill, but I'll go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, you do it.
Yeah, it's about breaking down your day and looking at it from the outside in. So you write, how I did mine was I wrote down everything that was asked of me, or that I wanted to do, or I needed to do in that day. Wrote it all down, got it all on a 24-hour clock, and because I'm me, I drew all over it and art things and stickers and that all over it too. And then it's looking at it and thinking, well, okay, what of those things could I drop? What would happen if I didn't do that one thing? What would happen if I didn't respond to that email? What would happen if I didn't make that appointment? What would happen if I didn't do the washing? What? And actually, just carving out some time each day for me, and the things that can wait. And then if I get to them, I get to them. If I don't, they no longer become important. They come to that point that what you've got on your list actually no longer becomes important. It was important then, but a few weeks down the line, I've still not got to it, and oh, hey, it's not important anymore. But taking that time then for me to sit and have a cup of coffee, read a book, do crochet, do something arty, go out for a walk, just see my mum, whatever, do something for me in that time, and make myself do it by planning it in and putting it on the plan of the 24 hours, because it's down there in writing. I'm more likely to do it. Whereas if I just think, oh, I might do this today, I never do it for me. If I put it down on the plan and I go, at this time I'm going to do this, you know, within reason, I do it because it's there.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's brilliant. I've told a lot of parents and carers about it after kind of learning that from you. And I guess it really does, for me, reinforce that bit about, you know, if we don't, or if you guys don't look after yourself, it is really difficult for you to look after your son or daughter all the time, really. And you know, we're in it for the long haul, aren't we? You know, the kids are kids. They're still going to be around. You know, we're in this for the long haul to manage and deal with. I guess the other bit that I would say to you about kind of coping and resilience plans for yourselves is, you know, if you can, and you don't need to share this with anybody, but be really honest with yourself about what are the things that you find really difficult about kind of parenting. And what are the behaviors or comments or ways of kind of, or the difficulties that your child experiences? What are those aspects that you find most difficult to respond to and support, really? And I guess, you know, it's a really difficult question to ask yourself, I'm sure, and it's a kind of really you know, you might feel in a really vulnerable place. I'm really truly not asking anybody to share this, but I guess what I'm saying is that I think, you know, I think it's okay to be saying to yourself, I really struggle when my son or daughter does this, and what I need to do is think about, how am I going to cope when my son or daughter does X or Y? Okay, that might not be about being able to change it or whatever, but it might just be about kind of recognizing that maybe I need to think about some strategies for myself, that when X happens, either I just need to walk away, or I need to just think, right, that's my 5 minutes, I'm going to go and sit and have a cup of tea, or whatever it is that you need to do for yourself to kind of, I guess, help you maintain that kind of sense of emotional availability and emotional resilience. Okay, you know, we don't, it's not, it's a bit like picking your battles, but I suppose even more so, really. It's a bit about you really truly kind of searching in yourself and thinking and being really honest with yourself about what are the most challenging bits of this. And therefore, if you're going to start putting some nuggets in your day where you're going to be taking care of yourself a little bit, maybe you might center it around those parts of the day that, you know, you find most difficult, or you are most tired, or whatever it is. And you know, I've heard different parents carers do it in different ways. You know, some people I've heard say, you know, that they actually, what they choose to do is make sure they get up half an hour earlier before anybody else in the house, because if they can just have half an hour of quiet time, it sets them up for the day, you know, just to be able to sit, have a cup of tea, and not have anybody kind of immediately on them, and kind of gather their thoughts for the day. Then that really helps. Another person who I've spoke to said, you know, what really helps them is to actually, at the end of the day, no matter how late the son or daughter goes to bed, and it can be really late at times, of just making sure that they go around and tidy the house. Now that might not be for everybody, but for them, they know that if they kind of wake up in the morning to a house that's untidy and the remnants of the day before, it's for them not, it's a kind of it's not starting afresh. And you know, for them it was kind of every day needed to be afresh. Now clearly, you know, we're not saying that you're able to kind of, you know, go out and have a walk around the block every time and things like that, but there will be, I guarantee, if you talk amongst yourselves and kind of write deep, search deep, there will be things that you do, hints and tips that you can kind of give to each other that will, you know, help to get through, really. And you know, I reinforce it because I really truly believe, and the evidence would say it, the more emotionally available we are to our children and young people, the more emotionally safe they feel, therefore the better they're able to kind of learn new skills and kind of, like, you know, rely on us to help them to manage their emotions, and to help them to kind of, you know, develop healthier ways of being and taking on new strategies. Does that make sense?
Mm.
Am I just rambling on because I can?
No, it makes total sense. Rebecca's asked, what about those children that don't want to engage, don't want to talk about their emotions or reflect on things, that are really resistant to doing these sorts of plans? How do we find a way around that?
Okay, so some of the ways that I've done that before is I've written them with the parents. So just kind of thinking about, because there are those young people who obviously don't want to, or find it really difficult to, or whatever else. And I guess what you can do in those situations is, you know, for yourself, have a best guess attempt, really, of filling in the boxes and thinking about, you know, so one box is, you know, as I'm looking at what makes me feel unsafe, having to think about what is it that you think makes your son or daughter feel unsafe, and therefore what is it that you think helps them to cope when they're feeling unsafe, and who helps them to cope and stuff like that. And I guess really you can kind of be thinking for yourself and using these boxes and these statements to be reflecting yourself maybe on what's going on, and therefore how you might be reacting, or what other things might be in place within the environment to change things. So I'm going to go into two things. One, you know, it's really hard because there is a difference between behavior and mental health, but they are also inextricably linked. You know, we can't deny that, particularly in children and young people. When we're thinking about behavior, and I guess also, you know, and mental health as well, but whenever we're making changes around that, there's equal parts about helping a young person to learn a new skill, but also thinking about what is happening in the environment, which may or may not be helping a young person. So you're probably sort of more common with thinking about that in terms of sensory terms, you know. So we talk about the environment in terms of, is it loud? Are there multiple lights going on? Is there, you know, lots of competing kind of sensory sensations going on? Is the music on, as well as having a conversation, as well as maybe having to sit on some really rough carpet and a, you know, a tag in the back of the neck there, which is just really frustrating. Those are all the things that I would put down to kind of sensory, environment changes that we can make to help a young person to feel more at ease in their environment, and therefore kind of, you know, less likely to engage in behaviours that might be seen as challenging to us, but as a communication form for the young person, or kind of, you know, might actually trigger an anxiety episode. Because if a young person is in class and is desperately trying to listen, but all this stuff is going on, and they're asked a question and they think they're going to get it wrong because they never really heard the question, boom, you get your anxiety spike that go up, and then you kind of get your behavior around that sometimes for young people. So I guess, in answer to your question, Rebecca, I would say to you, if your son or daughter you know, really doesn't want to engage in this, use it for yourself to think about, actually, is there something that I can be doing differently, or that could be different in the environment to kind of help my child, really. Does that help?
Yeah, I think so. I think sure. Let us know, Rebecca, if you want a bit more detail on that. Someone else has asked, oh, there we go, thumbs up from Rebecca.
Cool.
Someone else has asked, what about those that have perceived failure which causes anxiety? So how do we deal with the thought that they're going to fail anyway, and that the anxiety?
Yeah, so be a detective and look for evidence, I would say. So that is very much about, so for young people who really do think that they're going to fail at something, really look for the evidence that says that actually they have managed it in other environments, and write that down. You know, look for it everywhere. So, you know, think with your young person about times that they have managed it. If they can't identify those times, you know, tell them those times. Tell them about the times that they have succeeded in whatever it is that they think they're going to fail in. If it's about learning the new skill, and that they're not even going to attempt to try to learn that new skill because they're going to fail it, then what you do is you give them other opportunities to think of evidence of when they have learned a new skill. Okay, so I don't know, the first thing that might come to my mind would be maybe somebody, you know, a small child when they're first learning to ride their bike, and they say, absolutely not, I'm not going to do that because I'm going to fail, I'm going to fall off, I'm going to do this, that and the other. What, you know, I've no doubt that you naturally did as parents and carers without even knowing it, is that you provided the evidence for them that showed them that they're not going to fail. That actually, do you know what? Well, you know, when you first went on that slide and came down it, you didn't fail, you were able to climb up the slide. That was a new skill that you learned. You learned, you know, when you were a toddler, or you know, you started to walk, you learned that new skill, you know, actually you can do it because look how amazing you are on your scooter. And you know, if you can balance on a scooter, then you can definitely ride a bike. You would naturally, as parents and carers, I wholeheartedly believe, be doing this anyway. So if you've got, you know, if your son or daughter is kind of avoiding things because of perceived failure, find the evidence that helps them to realize that actually they have got it. Also validate it for them. You know, actually they may not do it first time round, so they might fail first, second, third time round, because learning a new skill is hard. And so, you know, really validating that could be really tough, can't it, to be able to keep going, and just being really honest that says that, you know, probably you won't get it right first time, but that's okay because that is learning. And then really break it down. So if there's something that they're not doing because they think they're failing about it, if you know, still really struggling with that, break it down. So I think we spoke in the last Zoom meeting about kind of like a graded exposure type approach, but it's really similar. So if there's something you're asking a young person to do, like I don't know what it might be. For example, I don't know, going to a friend's house without you, perhaps. Okay, so really break that down. The first thing you might have to do is just go to the friend's house with you. That's the first step. And then the second step is going to the friend's house and going upstairs and playing while you stay downstairs. That's the second step. And kind of really building it up so that you're not going from 0 to hero, but actually what you're doing is kind of saying, well, you smash that part of it, you know, so I'm pretty sure we can probably smash the next part of it. And motivate all the time and reinforce. So you know, praise and more praise, really. And particularly if a young person isn't getting it right, praise them. There will be something that they have got right within that. Praise them for it. Find what it is that they got right, if you like, and praise them for it. And even if they, I don't know, even if it's a maths test and they didn't quite pass the maths test, you know, glass half full type scenario, isn't it? Okay, we might not got 60%, but actually, you know, 40% is pretty awesome. You know, I'm nearly halfway, isn't it? You haven't got far to go. That sort of thing, really.
Yeah, I think that's great. I don't think I've got any other comments currently, but I like all the things you've said so far. They're really useful. It's really useful, I think, and I really like the thing about perceived failure. My two especially get a lot of that about, you know, I'm not going to try because I know I'm not going to be able to do it. So I like the idea of so
really be a detective, and you know, don't push the issue, don't push it there and then, you know, just, you know, come back to it in kind of a roundabout way, of just, you know, whatever it is, you know, maybe then find the time, oh, do you know, actually, you know, you said you couldn't do that, I'm sure you just did that, you know, that kind of thing, kind of way. And you know, and as I know none of you would, kind of don't expect miracles. This stuff takes time. Think how long it takes us, well, me to learn how to bake a cake, for example. You know, it takes time, and so, you know, really allow for time, and don't, you know, don't be hard on yourself if it doesn't work first, second, third, fourth, fifth time round, really. You know, it can take longer, and it does take longer for all of us.
Can I ask another question? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Second question of the night. Chantal, would you expect these kind of plans to be used in schools or in other settings, or do you think that they're the sort of things that are best done at home with parents as the main person talking to the young person about it?
So I think they are done in schools, but in different ways, probably not explicitly called coping and resilience plan. You might get like a behaviour plan or a personal progression plan or something like that. They sort of are used in schools, and some schools are using specifically coping and resilience plans, and I know that some schools have you know, taken our version of them and adapted them, you know, to work for a school setting, and are using them as a kind of first step before thinking of any additional referrals that might need to be done outside of school. So I do believe the thing about these is that you can make them fit individualized for any situation, for any environment, really.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, so the sort of ownership of the plan is obviously the young person. So how they choose to share them, whether they choose to share them with, you know, their school or parents or whoever else, is completely up to them. So they have to feel in control of that information. Is that right?
Yeah, so it always works best, obviously, if it's the young person's plan and they're in charge of it, they're in control of it. There are times, obviously, where we are thinking we've got a plan which is around quite high risk behaviours and or thoughts, and where, you know, there's safeguarding implications of it, which is where we would always override that, say actually we've got a duty and a responsibility to share your plan, and in those circumstances, you know, that plan is best shared across as wide a kind of area as possible, really, so that everybody's tuned in to help keep a young person safe. But I guess what we're talking about tonight isn't necessarily, you know, there's kind of that level of risk, if you like. This is, you know, these are ones that we use in service where there is, you know, really significantly high levels of risk. But what I like about them is that, you know, they don't have to be for that. They can be, you know, for adapted for individual purpose and individual use. But you're quite right, really. The more ownership a young person takes of it, the better the adherence and the more likely they are to kind of work for all.
Thank you.
Right, I don't think we've got any other questions at the moment, unless anyone else wants to.
You're all really quiet tonight. It scares me when you're like that.
We're all knackered.
I bet you are. I bet. It's getting quite it's getting harder, isn't it? The longer this goes on, the harder it's getting.
It is.
Is there any other questions on anything else, like not necessarily related to this, but on any other bits?
Yeah, anything at all. Have you had many referrals since you changed the criteria over the last few days? Has it been
not so much, yes. It's helpful to give a quick update. So we continue to run a 7-day service, kind of supporting an interim pathway with the General Hospital. In order to, I guess, mobilise that and sort out who was working when and what have you, we took a pause on accepting referrals so that we could get various different work plans in place and people's working patterns in place. We've gradually just opened, we've started gradually opening that up again, because we are still supporting a 7-day service and then trying to do the other end as well. So we are now open to anxiety and depression, but actually we didn't get that many referrals last week. So it's hard to know what that's about, really. It's hard to know whether because the majority of referrals always used to come from GPs, so it's hard to know about whether or not families aren't kind of going to GPs, or whether for many families at the moment actually you know, things have lifted a little bit in terms of pressure. I don't know, but we didn't get that many referrals. So we're in a position now where we are continuing to take referrals for anxiety and depression, but we're opening that up as well. The only thing at the moment that we are still kind of taking a pause on is referrals for ADHD assessments, where the risk is not urgent risk, really, and that's just mostly around the fact of you know, that's our main bulk of referrals, and we just need to really make sure that we kind of keep our capacity available at the moment for any urgent work that's coming through. And also, just, it's really hard to predict, isn't it, what the level of need might be as schools do start opening up more and young people start going back. So just getting that balancing act, really. But I would really say, and please do kind of share it within Reminds, you know, we're open for self-referrals. Duty is open. You know, if you're worried, if you're concerned, if you're unsure, just call us. We might not get back to you same day, but just call us, really. We'd rather hear from people than not, definitely.
I think you're right. I think with it being half term next week as well, it'll be, I think, the week after that when some schools start to open, or some people start to go back on part-time timetables, or however it's going to look, And sorry, Donna, I know that's not you. But when they do, I think that's when you might see the influx. So you need to keep the levels of staffing.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a lot of discussion around the group on how that's going to happen, who it's going to happen, what's going to change, and it's all unknown at the moment, isn't it? And that's going to raise the level of anxiety, and that's what's going to, I think, give the referrals through to you more then.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to massively raise anxiety, and and it is so unknown. I think we're all trying to plan for something that we don't quite know what we're planning for at the moment, it feels like, and it's sort of doing our best around that, really. But yeah, did you, because you had the one about with Dawn and Alison, didn't you, about reintegration back into school and stuff?
Yeah.
So yeah,
that was really helpful, and it made us think about different things as well.
Oh, good.
I think, I mean, for me, my daughter shares a taxi, so how's that going to work, and what's her anxiety going to be like in that if she can't share that taxi, or she has to go with a different driver and a different, it's
I hadn't thought about things like that, but of course,
it's like, and I hadn't till we went through that reintegration and thinking about the steps, and then I thought, actually, that's going to be the first step. Okay, excuse me 1 second.
Of course. Yes.
One thing I've been a bit disappointed about, actually, since lockdown, is how little contact I've had from the children's school about how we're getting on and everything. Especially you've got two reasonably vulnerable children in the house. I don't know if that's other people's experience, but I kind of feel like we've been dropped a little bit in terms of services keeping an eye on us. I mean, obviously we've got access to CAMHS, we're lucky. If we need to contact CAMHS, we know we can. But I thought, all this concern about vulnerable children not being at school, I thought the schools would be making quite a lot of effort to make phone calls and things like that to just check in on us. And I think, well, how, schools are often the first point of, well, they're often the ones, I guess, that are doing the referrals to CAMHS or are picking up on things. So they must be, I would have thought they must be missing quite a lot that they maybe could be picking up if they were able to find a bit of time just to, make a few phone calls to families and just keep in touch, or emails, or whatever the best way of keeping in touch with families is. I don't know if other people have, got the same experience as us.
I think we have, different, obviously, because Charlie's not in school, but we haven't heard from the local authority at all. They've just sort of disappeared, and there's been no contact about how he's getting on, or tutor or anything. I mean, luckily I'm keeping it ticking over, but no questions. I know local authority said they'd be doing a risk assessment for everyone that was homeschooled as well, but there's been none of that. Nothing sort of happened. I know there's not a lot they can do, but there's no checking up with him. Other people have checked in with us, which is great, but nothing from school. And Ruby has had nothing from, I mean, we have like the daily sort of feeding back about the work she's doing to her class teachers, but that's it. But I know she's not sort of on their scope as being, a child to be concerned about. But there's been nothing more than that. We don't even seem to get any of the emails from school. So I kind of agree. I think it's very different depending on what school you're at. I've heard some really good positive things, but also lots of people that have heard very little indeed.
It's tricky, isn't it? I think it's really tricky at the moment to kind of get the balance right, really, and move forward. And I think probably, I'm guessing people have got different experiences with different schools and different ways, because there's different academies, isn't there, different trusts, different independent schools and things, and it's hard. Is there anything else in terms of a CAMHS sort of service update, or anything else, any feedback that's helpful for us to know about what we might improve upon or try to improve upon at the moment?
Not for me. It's all been very positive. We really appreciate you doing all of these Zooms. They're really, really so helpful. And I know other people watch them and read all the notes afterwards if they can't get on, and we certainly keep pointing people back to them if they ask for help about stuff. So I really appreciate the fact that you're keeping us all in the loop so much. It's great.
No, it's an absolute pleasure, genuinely. And, you know, as always, you know where we are. I think you've got Kathy next week, have you?
Yes, ADHD next week.
Oh, enjoy that one. I love listening to Kathy speak. Yeah.
She's been great. I've just put on the chat bit. Just if you've got like a minute to give us some feedback, it's really helpful with these Zooms if we know sort of what you liked, what you didn't like, you know, what we can change next time. So if the link doesn't work, it's not showing my way that it's working, but if you can just copy and paste it and just take, it literally is less than a minute to do. It's really quick. That would be really helpful. But thank you everyone for coming. And Chantal, thank you for being here in the evening.
Pleasure.
Obviously,
always a pleasure.
Thank you.
Those salubrious surroundings. All right then, guys, take care.
All right,
Bye.
thanks everyone. Take care. Bye.